All right, let's jump right in. We're going to unpack the book of Ephesians, a letter that might be short, but trust me, it packed a huge punch that has shaped belief for 2 millennia. And to really get it, to really understand what it's saying, we have to journey back to the world it came from, a world of incredible power, commerce, and, you guessed it, a ton of magic. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this letter is an absolute giant in Christian thought. I mean, theologians, pastors, church leaders, from John Calvin all the way to today, so many have called it their favorite. Dr. Daniel Darko points out it's been a go-to text throughout history. So why? What's the big deal? Well, because packed inside this one short letter, you find the actual DNA for some of Christianity's most core ideas. You've got concepts like salvation by grace alone, the idea of spiritual warfare, the passionate call for unity in the church, spiritual gifts. It's all in there, laid out so powerfully. It is an unbelievably dense and influential piece of work. But here's the twist. For all its fame, Ephesians is also wrapped in a couple of really big mysteries. And the very first one scholars ask is a doozy. Who actually wrote this thing? And that question kicks off a really fascinating debate. So the whole debate pretty much boils down to this. On one hand, the letter literally opens by saying, hey, it's me, the Apostle Paul, and all the earliest church leaders, guys who were around right after the apostles, they all agreed. No question for them. But on the other hand, modern scholars look at it and go, this feels a little different. The style isn't quite the same as Paul's other letters, the sentences are way longer, and there are a bunch of words in here he just doesn't use anywhere else. So how do you explain that difference? Well, Dr. Darko gives this amazing analogy from his own life. He says, look, his writing style, even his vocabulary, it changes depending on where he is. Ghana, England, the US, his environment, his surroundings, they actually shape his language. So it makes you wonder, right? Could Paul's context, maybe who he was with or where he was writing from, be the reason for that stylistic shift? It's a really compelling thought. But the mystery doesn't stop there. The second major puzzle that scholars wrestle with is, who was this letter actually for? And believe it or not, the answer is not as simple as it looks. And here's the key piece of evidence. When you look at 3 of the oldest, most important manuscripts we have, we're talking the gold standard copies, the phrase in Ephesus, in that first verse, it's just not there. It's missing. This has led a lot of people to ask, wait a minute, was this letter written just for Ephesus, or was it a circular letter? Kind of like a memo, meant to be passed around to a bunch of churches in the area. So where do most scholars land today? Well, they tend to go with a kind of both-and solution. The idea is that the letter was probably addressed to the main church in the big city, Ephesus, the central hub. But it was written with the full intention that it would be copied and shared with all the smaller churches in the region. That seems to explain all the evidence pretty neatly. Okay, now this is where it gets really good, because to truly unlock what this letter is all about, you have to understand the city itself. We have to dive into the world behind the words. So welcome to ancient Ephesus. First, let's just get a sense of the scale here. Ephesus wasn't some quiet little town. We are talking about 250,000 people. To put that in perspective, in the ancient world, that made it one of the 3 biggest and most important cities on the planet, right up there with Rome and Alexandria. This was a mega city. And just try to imagine what that was like. As a major port, it was a crossroads for everything. International trade, different cultures, a ton of money, and all kinds of religions. Everyone and everything came through Ephesus. It was loud, it was busy, and it was just buzzing with energy. But if there was one thing that truly defined the city's identity, it was religion. And one goddess stood above all the rest, Artemis of the Ephesians. Her temple was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Her influence was everywhere. She was the city's patron, and the entire rhythm of life in Ephesus revolved around her. And the supernatural was woven into the fabric of daily life. Archaeologists have found more than 50 different pagan shrines there. Magic wasn't some weird hobby, it was mainstream. People used famous magic spells, known as the Ephesian letters, to get power. Astrology was huge. Everyone from politicians to regular folks consulted the stars. So when Christianity arrived, it wasn't walking into a secular world. It was walking into a world that believed spiritual forces were absolutely 100% real. And that, right there, sets the stage for a major collision. This is the story of what happens when the message of Jesus crashes head-on into the deeply spiritual world of ancient Ephesus. The book of Acts tells this incredible story. There was this group of traveling Jewish exorcists, and they saw the miracles happening through Paul. They saw the raw power connected to the name of Jesus, and they thought, whoa, that's a new magic word we can add to our list. So they decided to give it a try. So they find a man who is possessed by an evil spirit, and they try to command it using the name of Jesus, like an incantation. But what they get back is absolutely chilling. The spirit actually speaks back to them, and it says, Jesus I know, and Paul I recognize, but who are you? And what happened next was just terrifying. The possessed man physically lunges at all 7 of them. He completely overpowers them, beats them so badly that they flee the house, stripped naked and bleeding. The message could not have been clearer. This wasn't magic. The name of Jesus wasn't some formula you could just wield like a toy. The impact on the city was immediate, and it was huge. When news of this got out, people were terrified. Many who had been practicing magic and had since converted to Christianity suddenly realized they were playing with fire. They brought all their expensive magic scrolls and books, piled them up, and had this massive public bonfire. The total value was estimated at 50,000 pieces of silver. I mean, that is an absolute fortune. And this brings us right back around to the whole point. When you know this is the world the Ephesians lived in, a world where they dealt with pagan gods, the fear of magical attacks, and consulting the stars, all on a daily basis, it completely changes how you read this letter. So let me leave you with this question. How different does a famous line like, "Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers of this dark world," sound when you realize it was written to people living in that reality every single day?